Jennifer Furin.
Great, thank you so much, everyone. I feel like I should be giving all of you a certificate for having to listen to me speak so often in the last 2 days. But it gives me great pleasure and is a real privilege to be able to speak with you today about pediatric HIV. And I have to tell you, HIV is actually the reason that I personally went into medicine. I was a teenager when HIV first started coming around, and it's a really terrible disease. But in addition to being a terrible disease in terms of morbidity and mortality, it is such a rotten disease in that it isolates people from their communities and their loved ones. And so I've tried to dedicate my life and my career to fighting HIV along with MDR-TB. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about HIV in children in the Philippines. So the objectives of my lecture will be to review the epidemiology of HIV in children here and in the Philippines and then globally. The Philippines is a low-burden country when it comes to HIV, and I will tell you, again, with great admiration for the work that you guys do here, the Philippines suffers from a lot of similar problems that we see in low-burden countries, where very basic principles of HIV care that are widely implemented in countries with far fewer resources are not implemented here simply because your burden is low, and I think we can change that. I was inspired to hear Dr. Sally yesterday talking about elimination of measles, and I will tell you the Philippines is actually in a position to eliminate pediatric HIV. You guys are a country that doesn't need to see a single case of HIV in children, and we're going to talk about how to do that and why. And much like we talked about with tuberculosis yesterday and drug-resistant tuberculosis, HIV is very much a family disease. And I think if we approach it as a family disease, we'll be much more successful as opposed to just approaching it as a pediatric problem. So globally, there are more than 3 million children living with HIV today. Approximately 250,000 children are newly infected every single year, which is a rather appalling number. This number is appalling, but it represents a significant decrease in pediatric HIV. Overall rates of HIV infection are declining a little bit in most parts of the world, but in children they're dropping dramatically, and this is largely from very simple interventions being practiced. Most of the kids with HIV in the world live in sub-Saharan Africa. This is where I spend most of my time working, so I know that pandemic well. But children are really a very vulnerable population when it comes to HIV, and they face unique challenges that I hope we can highlight briefly in the talk today. You have to forgive the slide. I cut and pasted something, and I didn't cut and paste it well. So the yellow bars in this very bad graphic actually show the numbers of HIV cases in the Philippines, and you can see the numbers rising dramatically. Okay, there are 9 countries, only 9 countries in the world where rates of HIV are increasing, and the Philippines is one of those 9 countries. Between 2008 and 2012, rates of HIV in the Philippines have increased by 538%. Okay, so you guys are in the midst of a rising HIV epidemic when most of the world is seeing a decline. What this means is the traditional risk groups